The crackling flames of the crashed spaceship lit up the night sky over the Mojave Desert. Smoke rose in thick columns as emergency vehicles surrounded the area. Lieutenant Heather Martinez watched from behind the safety line as firefighters battled the blaze. This wasn't a normal aircraft. Its strange metal skin seemed to absorb the water sprayed on it rather than being cooled by it. "Lieutenant, we need you up front," said a voice behind her. Colonel Rogers motioned her forward. "If there's anyone alive in there who can talk, you're our best shot at understanding them." Heather nodded, her heart pounding. Years of studying, patterns in unknown languages had made her the military's top xenolinguist, but this was different. This was real. The firefighters had cut a hole in the side of the ship. As Heather approached in her protective suit, she could see strange symbols etched into the metal. She took photos quickly before entering the dark interior. Inside, the air was thick but breathable. Lights flickered along strange curved walls, and there, slumped in what looked like a control chair, was a being unlike anything Heather had ever seen. It was humanoid but clearly not human, with blue-tinted skin, 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern, and 6-fingered hands. One arm was badly injured with a thick purple liquid oozing from a wound. "Hello," Heather said carefully, keeping her distance. "I'm here to help." The alien's eyes blinked in sequence rather than together. It made a series of clicking sounds, followed by what seemed like words but in no language Heather recognized. She pulled out her tablet and started recording. "I'm going to try to communicate with you. Are you in pain?" The alien seemed to understand her question. It pointed to its arm and then made a sweeping gesture toward Earth outside the ship. "Danger," it said in heavily accented English. "NIGMA coming." Heather's eyes widened. "You speak English?" "Learn many languages. Warning. Earth." The alien struggled to speak, clearly in pain. Medical teams arrived, hesitant to approach the Yatsibi alien. Heather waved them forward. "It's injured, we need to help." "My name." "Zeltek," the alien said as medics carefully examined its wounds. "Council sent gear warn humans." "Warn us about what? Who are the NIGMA?" Heather asked, recording everything. "Empire, Conquerors, 17 systems, Fallen, Earth, next target." 3 days later, Heather sat in a heavily guarded military hospital room. Zeltek was recovering, connected to modified medical equipment. His ship's technology had helped doctors understand his biology enough to treat him. "The NIGMA Empire believes in genetic superiority," Zeltek explained, his English improving. "By the hour, they conquer species they consider lesser beings. They've detected your radio signals, they're coming." Major Alan Donovan, recently assigned as head of the preliminary Alien Defense Unit, leaned against the wall with his arms crossed. "And we're supposed to just believe you? This could be the oldest trick in the book. Claim to warn us about one enemy while you're the real threat." Zeltek's 4 eyes blinked in that strange pattern. "My people, the Council, have watched Earth for centuries. We have a policy of non-interference with developing worlds. But the NIGMA threat changed everything. We had to warn you." "Why?" asked Heather. "What's so special about us?" "Humans are unique. Most species specialize, become stronger, faster, smarter in specific ways. Humans adapt to anything. You survive where others die. You fight when others surrender." Zeltek's voice carried what seemed like admiration mixed with fear. "The Council has seen your history, your wars, your resilience. The NIGMA have never faced a species like yours." Alan pushed off from the wall. "If they're so powerful, what chance do we have?" "Alone?" "Very little," admitted Zeltek. "Their technology is centuries beyond yours. But with Council help, intelligence, technology we can share, you might survive." Heather noticed Zeltek's hands trembling slightly. "You're afraid of them." "Everyone is. They've never been defeated. 17 civilizations enslaved or destroyed. And you think we can do what 17 other worlds couldn't?" Alan asked skeptically. "I think You might be the first species with the right combination of intelligence, adaptability, and ruthlessness to stand a chance. 2 weeks later, Heather stood in an underground bunker as world leaders gathered via secure video link. President Ellis had just finished addressing the United Nations Security Council about the alien visitor and his warning. Most of them think we're crazy, General Catherine Winters said, joining Heather at the coffee station. Can't blame them. If I hadn't seen Zeltec myself, I wouldn't believe it either. They'll believe when we show them the ship's data, Heather replied. Zeltec allowed us to access their star charts. The NIGMA Empire is real and they're expanding this way. Alan approached with a tablet. Zeltec's information checks out. The radio telescope array in New Mexico confirmed unknown artificial signals coming from the direction he indicated. Something's out there and it's heading this way. How long do we have? Asked General Winters. Based on Zeltec's calculations, 9 months at most. Alan replied. Not enough time. Heather looked through the glass partition where Zeltec was demonstrating alien technology to a group of scientists. We need to make it enough time. 1 month later, the world had changed. The existence of alien life had been revealed to the public, along with the threat of the NIGMA Empire. Initial panic had given way to a strange unity, as nations set aside old conflicts to face this new common enemy. Heather worked 18-hour days helping establish communication protocols with the council representatives who had arrived after receiving Zeltec's message. She had become Earth's primary contact with the aliens. Your planet's response has been surprising, Zeltec told her one evening as they reviewed defensive strategies. Most species fragment under threat. Yours has united. We still fight among ourselves, Heather said, but we're good at recognizing bigger threats. The council underestimated humans, Zeltec admitted. I did too. Your military minds think of tactics our people never considered. Your scientists adapt our technology in ways we never imagined. Alan entered the room carrying new reports. The Chinese have successfully replicated the council's shield technology. Smaller than the original, but it works. That's weeks ahead of schedule, Heather said, impressed. Like I said, Alan replied with a rare smile, we're motivated. Zeltec suddenly stood, his 4 eyes wide with alarm. Something's wrong. The room's lights flickered. Alarms began to sound. A technician rushed in. Sir, we're detecting a massive energy surge from Zeltec's ship. It's the emergency beacon, Zeltec said, his voice filled with dread. It activates automatically after a certain period without pilot override. It's sending a message to the council. Is that bad? Heather asked. The message contains our exact coordinates, Zeltec whispered. And NIGMA listening posts are everywhere. They'll know precisely where Earth is now. Alan's face hardened. How long? If they were already on their way, this could cut months off their journey. They could be here in as little as 6 months. The 3 of them stared at each other as the reality sank in. Earth had just been exposed to its greatest threat, and they were nowhere near ready. Then we better get to work, Alan said firmly, because if they're coming early, we're going to make damn sure they regret it. 6 months passed in a blur of activity. The world had transformed in ways no one could have imagined before Zeltec's arrival. Once secret military bases now hosted alien advisors, factory lines that once made cars and computers now produced components for weapons designed to fight the NIGMA. Heather watched the sunrise from the observation deck of the new United Nations Space Defense Headquarters in Colorado. The mountain facility had been built in record time, carved deep into the rock where even NIGMA weapons might not reach. You look tired, said a familiar voice. Zeltec joined her at the window. His wounds had long since healed, and he wore a specially designed uniform marking him as the Council's ambassador to Earth. I am tired, Heather admitted, but we all are. Below them, in the massive central chamber, hundreds of people from dozens of nations worked at computer stations. Large screens showed the progress of Earth's preparations, defense systems being built, ships under construction, training operations in progress. Your people have accomplished in 6 months what most species couldn't do in 6 years, Zeltek said. Fear is a powerful motivator, Heather replied. Not just fear, Zeltek corrected her. Hope, too. Humans fight hardest when protecting what they love. A door slid open behind them, and General Winters entered with Alan Donovan, now promoted to colonel. The latest reports from the lunar base, General Winters said, handing Heather a tablet. The early warning system is operational. If the NIGMA enter the solar system, we'll know. Good, said Heather. How are the special forces coming along? Alan's face showed pride mixed with concern. My asymmetric space warfare teams are as ready as they can be, given that none of them have actually fought aliens before. Sergeant Blackwood's squad scored highest on the simulation again. Paul Blackwood? Heather asked. The former rodeo champion? The same, Alan nodded. Turns out skills for staying on an angry bull translate well to maneuvering in zero gravity. He thinks differently than the others, unpredictable, adaptive. We'll need people like that, said Zeltek grimly. Deep underground in Montana, Jake. Russell wiped sweat from his forehead as he peered through a microscope. Behind sealed glass, samples of bacteria cultured from Earth soils interacted with synthetic tissue, created to mimic NIGMA biology. Jake, you need to see this, called his wife Samantha from her workstation. Her voice held the excitement of discovery. Jake joined her, looking at her computer screen where data scrolled past. Is that what I think it is? Yes, she confirmed. The common soil bacteria we collected from the garden center. They produce compounds that are highly toxic to the NIGMA cellular samples. Their biology has no defense against it. Has anyone else tried this approach? Jake asked. Not according to the Council database, Samantha replied. They're naturally immune to most bacteria in the galaxy, so they never considered biological countermeasures. But NIGMA evolved in a completely different environment. Jake's mind raced with possibilities. How quickly could we culture enough to weaponize it? That's the best part, Samantha said, her eyes bright. We don't need to make much. It reproduces on its own. If we can deliver even a small amount to their ships. We need to tell command right away, Jake said, already reaching for the secure phone. Dr. Olivia Grant stood in front of a massive whiteboard covered in equations. The quantum physics lab in what used to be CERN had been repurposed for weapons research. Council scientists worked alongside human physicists, trying to understand how NIGMA energy weapons functioned. It doesn't make sense, Olivia muttered. According to everything we know, their weapons should tear reality apart at the quantum level. The energy required would collapse into a black hole. Unless, said her council counterpart, a crystalline being named Rytel. They're drawing power from somewhere else. Olivia's eyes widened as understanding dawned. They're not creating the energy, they're channeling it from another dimension. Precisely, Rytel confirmed. Which means we could potentially disrupt that channel, Olivia finished, already scribbling new equations. If we create a quantum cascade effect that severs their connection to their power source, their weapons would fail, Rytel agreed. Olivia stopped writing and looked up. But such a cascade could potentially affect our own technology too. Or worse, tear a hole in space-time itself. A risk we may need to take, Rytel said softly. I've seen what happens to worlds that fall to the NIGMA. A quick end might be preferable. Sergeant Paul Blackwood floated in the zero-gravity training chamber, dodging holographic NIGMA warriors. His squad moved with practiced precision, using the strange alien weapons provided by the Council. Too slow, Martinez, he called as a junior. Soldier missed her target. Remember, NIGMA have 4 eyes, they see more than you do. Use that against them by attacking from directions they can't all cover at once. Colonel Donovan watched from the observation booth. Next to him stood Victoria Mitchell, recently appointed as Earth's unified diplomatic representative. Will they, be ready? Victoria asked quietly. They'll have to be, Alan replied. The real question is, will any of us be ready for what's coming? Victoria's face was solemn. The president wants me to prepare for diplomatic options, just in case there's a chance for peaceful resolution. Alan laughed without humor. According to Zeltech, the NIGMA don't do peaceful resolution. They conquer or they die trying. Then we prepare for both possibilities, Victoria said firmly, and hope we don't need your soldiers. Heather sat in the communications center, listening to Zeltech explain NIGMA cultural hierarchy to a group of intelligence analysts. His knowledge had proven invaluable, though he admitted the information was centuries old. The council had avoided direct contact with the NIGMA for generations. Red light began flashing on the main console, then another, then dozens more. "What is it?" Heather asked the technician. "Signal from lunar base," the young woman replied, her face pale. "And from the Mars outpost, and from every deep space sensor we have." General Winters rushed into the room. "Report. Multiple objects entering the solar system, ma'am," the technician said. "Massive energy signatures, moving faster than anything we've ever recorded." Zeltech moved to the screen, his four eyes widening. "NIGMA warships, at least 30 of them." "That's not possible," General Winters said. "Your estimates gave us 3 more months." "They must have developed new engine technology," Zeltech said, his voice hollow with dread. "Or they were already closer than we thought." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Earth's preparations were far from complete. The planetary shield network was only at 60% capacity. The space fleet consisted of just 12 hastily constructed vessels. The specialized weapons were still in testing. Alan stepped forward, his face set with determination. "We knew this was always a possibility. Now we fight with what we have." Heather looked at the screens showing the approaching fleet. The massive ships resembled dark angular cities floating through space, bristling with weapons. "Send the alert," General Winters ordered. "All personnel to battle stations. Activate planetary defenses." As sirens began to wail throughout the facility, Heather turned to Zeltech. "You warned us they were coming. Now we'll show them why they should have stayed away." The NIGMA fleet positioned itself in the space between Earth and Mars. 30 massive ships, each the size of a small city, hung in the blackness like dark stars. Their hulls were covered in strange, angular patterns that seemed to absorb light, rather than reflect it. Inside the Space Defense Headquarters, screens showed the fleet from every angle, captured by cameras on satellites in the lunar base. The room was silent as military leaders and scientists stared at the enemy they had prepared to face for 6 months. "They're not attacking," General Winters noted. "Why?" Zeltech studied the formation. "Standard NIGMA procedure. They want us to see their power. To understand what we face, they want fear to do half their work." As if on cue, every screen and communication device on Earth flickered. The image of a NIGMA appeared. The alien was tall and thin with gray skin that seemed to shimmer with metallic highlights. Its 4 eyes were arranged in a diamond pattern, like Zeltech's, but they glowed with a cold yellow light. Bone-like ridges protruded from its head in a crown-like formation. "People of Earth," the NIGMA spoke in perfect English. "I am Supreme Geneticist Kraxos, Emperor of the NIGMA Dominion. Your world has been evaluated and found to be genetically unstable. Your species shows dangerous mutation patterns and requires immediate processing." The alien's voice was smooth but carried an undercurrent of disgust, as if he were describing something unpleasant. "You will surrender your governments to NIGMA control within 1 Earth rotation. Those who comply will be processed humanely. Those who resist will face extinction. To demonstrate our resolve," the screen split to show a view of Earth's moon. A bright beam of energy shot from the largest NIGMA ship, striking the lunar surface where the human base had been established. The explosion was visible even from Earth, a flash of light that left a glowing crater where 300 people had been stationed. "The choice is yours," Kraxos concluded. "Surrender or die." The transmission ended. In the command center, Alan's face had gone pale. "My brother was on that base," he said quietly. General Winters placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'm sorry, Alan, we all lost friends up there." Victoria Mitchell stepped forward. "We need to respond. If they think we're cowering in fear, they'll attack immediately." "I agree," said Heather. "But we need to buy time. The biological agent Jake and Samantha developed isn't ready for deployment yet." General Winters nodded. Ms. Mitchell, prepare. A response. Tell them we're considering their terms and request a face-to-face meeting. Victoria looked surprised. A meeting? On their ship? Yes, the general replied. Operation Trojan Horse just moved from theoretical to active. 2 hours later, Heather sat in a small shuttle with Victoria, Alan, and 6 soldiers disguised as diplomatic aides. Zeltek was with them, using council technology to mask his biosignature so the NIGMA wouldn't detect one of their ancient enemies among the humans. Remember, Victoria briefed them, our job is to appear willing to negotiate while keeping them talking as long as possible. The longer we're on their ship, the more time Sergeant Blackwood's team has to complete their mission. Alan checked his concealed weapon. And if they figure out what we're doing, then we fight our way out, Victoria replied calmly, or we don't come back at all. The shuttle approached the massive NIGMA flagship. It was even more impressive up close, nearly 20 miles long, with strange energy patterns flowing across its dark surface. A tractor beam caught their shuttle, guiding it into a docking bay large enough to hold a small city. As they exited the shuttle, Heather was struck by the scale of everything. The NIGMA were slightly taller than humans, but they built on a much grander scale. NIGMA guards met them, soldiers in armor that seemed to flow like liquid metal. They carried weapons that pulsed with the same energy Heather had seen destroy the moonbase. Follow, one guard ordered. Supreme geneticist awaits. As they walked through the massive ship, Heather noticed how few NIGMA they saw. Their crew seems small for such a big ship, she whispered to Zeltek. Automation, he replied quietly. NIGMA value their own safety above all. The fewer of them at risk, the better. They entered an enormous chamber. At its center sat Emperor Kraxos on a floating throne. Behind him, screens showed different regions of Earth. The human delegation, Kraxos announced, his voice echoing, in the vast space. You have chosen wisely to discuss terms. Victoria stepped forward. We come seeking understanding, Emperor Kraxos. Earth has never encountered your empire before. We wish to learn more before any irreversible decisions are made. Kraxos made a gesture that might have been amusement. There is nothing to understand. Your species has been evaluated. Your genetic code contains dangerous adaptability. Left unchecked, humans would eventually threaten more stable species. Surely we could find a compromise, Victoria suggested. Earth has resources that might benefit the NIGMA. We require nothing from inferior species except compliance, Kraxos replied. But I am curious. Why do you resist what is inevitable? Other worlds accepted their fate with less defiance. While Victoria engaged the Emperor in philosophical debate, Heather noticed Alan checking his watch. Sergeant Blackwood's team should be planting the biological agents in the ship's ventilation system by now. Suddenly, a NIGMA officer rushed into the room and whispered something to Kraxos, the Emperor's yellow eyes fixed on Zeltek. A council spy, Kraxos hissed. Guards, seize them all. Everything happened at once. The disguised soldiers drew hidden weapons. Alan pushed Victoria behind a pillar as energy blasts scarred the floor, where she had stood. Heather dove for cover as chaos erupted. The mission is compromised, Alan shouted into his communicator. Blackwood, report status. Almost done, sir, came Paul's voice through static. 2 more distribution points to go. No time, Alan replied, firing at a NIGMA guard. Plant what you have and get to extraction point. Heather saw Zeltek take down a guard with surprising skill. She hadn't known the seemingly peaceful ambassador could fight like that. We need to get back to the shuttle, Victoria called. You go, Alan decided suddenly. Take Heather and the ambassador. I'll stay with half the team and make sure Blackwood completes the mission. That's suicide, Heather protested. Alan's eyes were hard. They killed my brother. Besides, someone needs to make sure that biological agent gets distributed. A nearby explosion rocked the chamber. More NIGMA troops were arriving. Get to the escape pod, Alan ordered, tossing Victoria a small device. This will guide you back to Earth. Tell them. He paused, looking at the approaching NIGMA forces. Tell them we warned them. Zeltek grabbed Heather's arm. We must go now. As they ran for the escape pods, Heather looked back to see Alan and 3 soldiers creating a defensive position, buying them time to escape. Minutes later, their escape pod launched from the NIGMA flagship, racing back toward Earth. Behind them, the massive ships began to move, forming an attack formation. The biological weapon, Victoria asked Zeltek, "Will it work?" "If they manage to plant enough of it," he replied. "But it will take time to spread through their systems." Heather watched, the NIGMA fleet growing smaller through the viewport. Time is something I don't think we have much of anymore. 3 weeks into the war, Earth was struggling to survive. The NIGMA had established bases in major cities across the globe. Their ships hung in the sky like dark clouds, blocking the sun in some regions. Their superior weapons had destroyed military bases, government buildings, and infrastructure with frightening ease. Deep beneath the Pacific Ocean, in a command center built inside the Marianas Trench, Heather worked tirelessly to coordinate what remained of Earth's resistance. The underwater facility was one of the few command posts the NIGMA hadn't located yet. "We lost contact with the European resistance," reported a tired communications officer. "The NIGMA have jammed all signals in that region." Heather rubbed her eyes. She hadn't slept more than 3 hours at a stretch since returning from the NIGMA flagship. "Keep trying. Use the Council communication protocols Zeltek provided. They might get through." "Any word from the Russell team?" asked General Winters, who looked equally exhausted. "Their last message said the biological agent is spreading," Heather replied. "But more slowly than they hoped. Samantha designed it to be dormant at first, to ensure it would spread throughout the NIGMA population before they detected it." General Winters nodded grimly. "Let's hope it activates soon. We're running out of options." A young soldier rushed into the room. "Ma'am, we're picking up strange readings from NIGMA patrols in the western regions." Heather and the general moved to a large screen showing a map of North America. Red dots representing NIGMA forces were blinking irregularly in several locations. "Their movements have become erratic," the soldier explained. "And we've received reports of NIGMA soldiers collapsing during combat." Hope flickered in Heather's chest. "The bacteria. It's working." "Let's not celebrate yet," cautioned General Winters. "They still outnumber and outgun us." Zeltek entered the command center, his blue skin paler than usual from weeks of being underwater. "I've analyzed the latest data. The biological agent is affecting their neural systems. Soon they'll be unable to operate their more complex weapons." "That's the first good news in weeks," Heather said. The main screen suddenly flashed, showing new movement from the NIGMA fleet. Several ships were repositioning, moving higher into the atmosphere. "What are they doing?" General Winters asked. Zeltek studied the patterns, his 4 eyes widening with alarm. "No, they wouldn't." "What?" Heather demanded. "Atmosphere ignition weapons," Zeltek whispered. "If they can't have Earth, they'll make sure no one does." Silence fell over the command center as the implications became clear. The NIGMA were preparing to turn Earth into a lifeless rock. Aboard the NIGMA flagship, Sergeant Paul Blackwood moved silently through the ventilation system. For 3 weeks, he had avoided capture, planting additional samples of the biological agent and gathering intelligence. The ship was enormous, with many unused sections where he could hide. Paul passed a grate and saw 2 NIGMA soldiers below. One suddenly clutched its head and collapsed. The other tried to help but was clearly struggling to stand itself. "It's working," Paul whispered to himself. The bacteria were finally taking effect. He continued through the ship until he reached the prison section. After disabling the lone guard who was already showing signs of infection, Paul studied the cell controls. Most were empty, but one reading caught his eye. Human life signs. The cell door slid open to reveal Colonel Alan Donovan, bruised and thin but still alive. He sat up slowly, squinting at Paul. "Blackwood? Is that really you?" Paul helped him stand. "Yes, sir. Sorry I'm late for the extraction." Alan managed a weak smile. "Better late than never. The rest of my team?" Paul shook his head. "You're the only human I've found alive." He handed Alan a small weapon taken from a NIGMA guard. "We need to move. The ship is in chaos." Many NIGMA are falling sick. The biological agent worked, Alan said with grim satisfaction. Yes, but they've figured out what's happening. They're positioning their ships to burn the atmosphere. We need to stop them. Alan's eyes hardened. Then let's find the bridge. Dr. Olivia Grant worked frantically in the underwater laboratory adjacent to the command center. The quantum technology she had been developing with Rytel was their last hope. The calculations are correct, Rytel insisted, its crystalline form glittering under the lights. But the power requirements are enormous. We'll route energy from every power plant still under our control, Olivia replied. It has to work. Victoria Mitchell entered the lab. In the 3 weeks since their escape from the NIGMA flagship, she had become Earth's de facto leader, coordinating the global resistance. Project Lazarus, Victoria said. Will it work? Olivia looked up from her equations. In theory, yes, we can create a quantum cascade that will disrupt the dimensional energy source the NIGMA weapons use. But there's a risk it could affect our technology too, or even tear a hole in space-time. At this point, we have nothing to lose, Victoria said. The NIGMA are preparing to ignite our atmosphere. General Winters says we have hours at most. Olivia nodded. We'll be ready. On the NIGMA flagship, Paul and Alan fought their way through corridors filled with sick and dying aliens. The biological agent had spread throughout the ship, affecting nearly every NIGMA they encountered. The bridge should be through here, Paul said, consulting a rough map he had drawn during his weeks hiding on the ship. They entered a vast chamber where Emperor Kraxos sat slumped on his throne. Around him, officers struggled to maintain their posts. Humans, Kraxos rasped, his yellow eyes dimming. What have you done to us? We warned you, Alan said simply, training his weapon on the Emperor. Earth isn't easy to conquer. You've poisoned us, Kraxos accused. A dishonorable tactic. You were going to enslave our entire species, Paul countered. We did what we had to do. Kraxos tried to rise but fell back. It doesn't matter. The atmosphere ignition sequence has begun. Your victory will be short-lived. Alan moved to a control console. How do we stop it? You can't, Kraxos said with a wheezing sound that might have been laughter. Only I know the codes and I would rather die than give them to a lesser species. Paul noticed a communications panel. Maybe we can't stop the weapons, but we can warn Earth exactly where they'll strike. In the underwater command center, Heather received the unexpected transmission from the NIGMA flagship. Heather, it's Alan. I'm alive and I've taken control of the bridge with Sergeant Blackwood. The room erupted in cheers. We can't stop their weapons, Alan continued, but we're sending targeting data. And stand by, we've got something else coming your way. Minutes later, the data arrived, showing exactly where the atmosphere ignition would begin. General Winters immediately relayed the information to all remaining military forces. This might give us a chance to evacuate those areas, she said. Or a chance to use Project Lazarus, Victoria suggested. Olivia stepped forward. If we know exactly where their weapons will fire, we can target our quantum cascade precisely. It would give us the best chance of success. General Winters looked around the room. It's our only shot. Proceed with Project Lazarus. As the NIGMA ships positioned themselves for the final attack, Earth made its last stand. Power stations worldwide diverted all energy to Olivia's quantum device. The massive apparatus hummed with building energy as final preparations were made. Energy levels at maximum, Rytel reported. Targeting systems locked on the lead NIGMA ship. Olivia's hands hovered over the activation controls. God help us all, she whispered, and pressed the button. A strange ripple spread outward from the device, invisible to the naked eye but detectable on instruments. It moved at impossible speed, passing through solid matter as if it weren't there. When it reached the NIGMA ship, something extraordinary happened. The strange energy patterns that had flowed across their hulls flickered and died. Weapons that had been charging suddenly went dark. It's working, someone shouted in the command center. The quantum cascade is disrupting their dimensional power source, Olivia explained, her voice filled with wonder. Without it, their technology can't function. On screens throughout the command center, they watched as NIGMA ships began to drift, Some collided with each other, others fell into decaying orbits. "We did it," Heather breathed. "We actually did it." The communications officer looked up suddenly. "Ma'am, we're receiving a transmission from Colonel Donovan again. He says Emperor Kraxos wants to discuss surrender terms." The quantum cascade spread throughout the solar system, jumping from ship to ship through the NIGMA's own communication network. Within hours, the entire NIGMA fleet had gone silent. Their massive vessels hung in space like dead metal islands, weapon systems offline, engines powerless. On Earth, people emerged from shelters to see the once threatening ships now drifting harmlessly in the sky. Some began to fall, burning up in the atmosphere or crashing into unpopulated areas. Military teams scrambled to secure crash sites, finding mostly empty ships with a few surviving NIGMA, all sick from the bacterial agent. In the underwater command center, Heather watched as video feed showed Alan and Paul on the bridge of the NIGMA flagship. They had jury-rigged human technology to the alien systems, allowing basic communication. "We have complete control of the flagship," Alan reported. "Emperor Kraxos is in custody, along with what's left of his command staff. Most of the NIGMA are too sick to resist." "And the surrender?" asked General Winters. Alan's face showed grim satisfaction. "The Emperor wants to speak directly to Earth's leadership." Minutes later, the screen showed Emperor Kraxos. The once proud alien looked diminished. His metallic skin had dulled, and his yellow eyes flickered weakly. When he spoke, his voice was raspy. "People of Earth," he began, "the NIGMA Empire offers unconditional surrender. We ask only for mercy for our surviving people. The weapon you used against us—" He paused, clearly struggling. "It attacks our very biology. Without treatment, all NIGMA will die within days." Victoria stepped forward. "You came to conquer us, to enslave or destroy our species. Why should we show mercy when you intended none for us?" Kraxos lowered his head. "Because you have proven yourselves the stronger species. In our 1,000-year history, no one has defeated the NIGMA. You have not only defeated us, you have brought us to extinction's edge. Our fleet is dead in space. Our soldiers are dying. Our empire—" He seemed to struggle with the concept. "Our empire is no more." The command center fell silent. After weeks of desperate fighting and years of fear since Xeltek's warning, victory seemed almost unreal. "We need to put it to a vote," Victoria decided. "All nations must have a say in this." The global vote took 24 hours. Earth's surviving leadership debated fiercely. Some wanted the NIGMA destroyed completely, arguing they were too dangerous to allow any survivors. Others pushed for mercy, saying that genocide would make humans no better than the NIGMA had been. The final decision was complex. The NIGMA would be allowed to survive, but under strict conditions. They would be confined to a quarantine zone on Mars, far from Earth. Their technology would be studied but never returned to them. Their biology would be understood but never weaponized again. Heather found Xeltek standing alone in the observation dome, looking up at the sky where NIGMA ships were being towed into safe orbits. "You look troubled," she said. "I am," he admitted. "The Council believed the NIGMA could not be defeated, only contained. Now they are broken forever. It is difficult to process." "Are you worried about what happens next?" Heather asked. "About what we'll do with their technology." Xeltek turned his 4 eyes to her. "The Council feared humans because of your adaptability and your warrior nature. Now you have defeated our greatest enemy using both those traits. Some on the Council will see this as confirmation of their fears." "And what do you see?" Heather asked. "I see hope," Xeltek replied. "No other species would even consider showing mercy to the NIGMA. Perhaps humans' adaptability includes the capacity to grow beyond being warriors when the fighting is done." Jake and Samantha worked tirelessly in their lab, now relocated to a secure facility in Colorado. They had shifted from developing weapons to creating treatments. "This strain should work," Samantha said, studying data on her screen. "It won't cure them completely, but it will allow their bodies to fight off the bacteria enough to survive." Jake looked at the treatment samples they had prepared. But they'll never fully recover? Their immune systems will remain compromised? Yes, Samantha confirmed. They'll need regular treatments for the rest of their lives. They'll never again be strong enough to pose a military threat. Jake nodded slowly. It feels strange to work so hard to save those who came to destroy us. That's what makes us different from them, Samantha replied. 1 year later, Heather stood on the observation deck of the new lunar colony, rebuilt where the NIGMA had destroyed the original base. Through the massive windows, she could see Earth, shining blue and green against the blackness of space. Mars was visible too, where the surviving NIGMA now lived in climate-controlled domes. Alan joined her, wearing the uniform of the new United Earth Defense Force. The colonel's insignia had been replaced with general stars. The Council fleet has been detected entering the solar system, he reported. 8 ships. They'll be here within the hour. Heather smiled. I wonder what they'll think when they see what we've done. They expected to find Earth conquered or destroyed, Alan said. Instead, they'll find us stronger than ever, with NIGMA technology adapted to our use and the NIGMA themselves contained. And working with us, some of them, Heather added. The cultural exchange program is making progress. Some younger NIGMA are actually interested in human ways of thinking. The door opened and Zeltek entered. His council uniform had been replaced with the diplomatic attire of Earth's Alien Affairs Division. The welcome ceremony is prepared, he said. Victoria wants you both there when she greets the council representatives. As they walked to the reception area, Heather could see ships landing on the lunar surface through the corridor windows. The sleek council vessels looked different from the angular NIGMA ships now being dismantled in Earth orbit. Did you ever imagine this day would come? She asked Zeltek. When you crashed on Earth to warn us? Never, he admitted. I expected to die completing my mission. At best, I hoped some humans might survive in hiding after the NIGMA conquest. He gestured to the thriving lunar colony around them. This was beyond imagining. The council, diplomats entered the reception hall, beings of various forms from across the galaxy. Their expressions showed their shock at seeing humans not just surviving but thriving, with Zeltek standing proudly among them. Victoria stepped forward to greet them. Welcome to Earth territory. We have much to discuss about the future of galactic relations. Later, as the formal meetings concluded, Heather found herself alone with Zeltek, watching Earth rise over the lunar horizon. News is spreading throughout the galaxy, Zeltek told her. The story of how an unknown species from an insignificant yellow star defeated the NIGMA Empire when no one else could. What are they saying about us? Heather asked. That you are dangerous, Zeltek said honestly. That you are unpredictable. That you did what 17 other species could not. He turned to face her, and that the NIGMA made the greatest mistake in their history when they ignored your warning. Heather smiled as she watched her home planet glowing in the distance. We warned the NIGMA Empire about Earth. Now they're gone forever. And we're just getting started.